Most modern films exist as merely 1080p master files with better color and bitrate. I'm a film buff. I am interested in the technical specs of Blu-rays and 4K transfers and all that type of stuff. I pay attention. I watch YouTube videos about the latest releases by Arrow Video and the other boutique labels. I know stuff about filmmaking. I have more knowledge than the average person on the street. And yet, I was completely unaware of the situation I am about to describe. I was shocked by what I recently learned. It took many hours of obsessively digging into the subject to get to the revelations that I came across. This information is not hidden. It is probably known by a bunch of people, but I think the vast majority of people are unaware. Are you aware that when you go to see a movie, you're not seeing a super high-quality product? You are, in fact, seeing something that is much less than you think it is. When a film is completed, you would assume the definitive master copy is of significantly higher quality than what the consumer gets. And the reality is surprisingly different. Instead, what the consumer gets is actually very comparable in quality to the final master copy. When they used to make 35mm film prints, the final master copy would have a resolution of about between 5K and 6K. And if you scan that at higher quality, even though the data isn't necessarily there, you are still getting some benefits because the data that is there is getting refined into more and more pixels, giving you more and more clarity. Then, round about 2005, there was a digital revolution, and the pipeline for constructing a final movie went completely digital to the point that a film was edited and completed as a digital master copy. And that master copy is the source of all of our future derived copies. So far, that's okay. No major issues. But you would assume that the digital master copy must be of much higher quality than what the consumer is getting. You would assume it's maybe 6K in quality. At the very least, 4K in quality. It turns out no, it is not. Mainly because of extensive CGI in movies nowadays, and because color timing is being done digitally. The whole process has to be done inside a computer, even if the camera used on set was 35mm instead of a digital camera. Color correcting can now no longer be done chemically with 35mm film, as that whole pipeline has been destroyed. Instead, the entire movie gets touched up and altered inside a computer. Even if you make a movie with zero CGI, the color correcting process has to be done inside a digital environment. So the film will have to be fed into a computer in order to be color corrected. You cannot avoid the computer process. And if your movie has lots of CGI in it, then it is absolutely essential that it's done inside a computer. Exporting lots of CGI and exporting the color-corrected final footage in 4K is prohibitively expensive and demands a lot of storage space and processing power to the point it is very expensive, very awkward, and basically not worth the effort for the studios. Also, creating 4K computer effects is far more expensive than lower resolution effects due to extra work, processing time, data management, infrastructure costs, and so on. Doing complex CGI in 4K adds many more millions to budget and slows the whole process down. Doing anything in the film industry in 4K instead of 2K seems to add millions to the budget. So what has happened is that an overwhelming percentage of films, possibly as high as 99%, made since about 2005, are now completed in 2K rather than 4K. They may shoot the raw footage in 6K, but they edit it with lower quality proxy files and finalize the final output for the final master copy in 2K from the 6K files. Only a small number of projects get edited and outputted to the final digital master copy in 4K. That is usually only because the director is so powerful and such a big name that he or she can force the studio to spend extra money. Or it is a distributor like Apple that looks upon 4K as an essential marketing tool. But in the case of about 99% of projects, they are being completed in 2K. Now you may think, well, 2K isn't so bad. It's at least probably roughly about twice the pixels that you have in a domestic Blu-ray 1080p file. But it does mean that the 4K version of the movie released on 4K Blu-ray Ultra High Definition that will need to be upscaled using AI in order to create a proper 4K looking image, which is a compromise. It's actually worse than that sounds. Because it turns out that there are two ways of talking about 2K. There's the way the world of film talks about 2K, and there's the way the world of computers talk about 2K. When you buy a computer monitor and it's 2K, you are getting roughly just under twice as many pixels as 1080p. In the world of film, when they talk about 2K, what they are actually talking about is basically a 1080p video file, 2048 by 1080, with 128 extra pixels along the horizontal axis. So, it's slightly wider than your 1080p domestic Blu-ray. But that's it. It's not taller. It's not 4K. It's 1080p with a few extra pixels on the horizontal. A movie that costs $1 million, or $5 million, or $15 million, or $30 million, or $60 million, or $100 million, or $150 million, or $200 million is being completed to the point where the final master copy, the ultimate source of all other copies that will be derived from it, is basically a 1080p Blu-ray picture with a few extra lines of pixels on the horizontal. That is scandalous. And it doesn't stop there. The aspect ratio also changes how many actual active pixels you get. If a film is shot in a large scope 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio, the black bars are baked into the picture on the top and bottom, meaning that the actual active picture is not 1080 lines. It's under 1,000 lines. And if they shoot in 1.85:1, then they get the full vertical 1080 lines of resolution. But you don't get the benefit of the extra horizontal pixels because there will be very small black pillars on either side of the picture. So when you go to the cinema to see the movie projected on a large screen, you are in effect watching a Blu-ray, a 1080p video, with a few extra lines of resolution on the sides. The picture quality is better because it has a much higher bitrate and a wider color palette. It can depict more shades of each color, which means there is less blocks of one color sitting beside each other. So a blue sky will not look pixelated. Also, the sound system will be bigger and more powerful than anything you can get in your home. But otherwise, you are essentially watching a Blu-ray. In fact, your ultra-high-definition 4K Blu-ray does color better than most cinemas because a television screen can completely turn off a dark pixel, so it is proper black, while cinemas, unless they use a laser projector, can only create a murky dark gray which is not quite fully black. And with the higher bitrate of the 4K disc, it is almost imperceptible to the human eye the difference between what you see in a cinema and what you see at home. Also, you do not have any control over the projector in the cinema, and you do not know in most cases if they're using a 2K or a 4K projector. So even if you know the movie you are watching has been sourced from a 4K master, there's probably no guarantee the actual projector being used is projecting the 4K image. And as I already said, the vast majority of movies made since 2005 were never even completed in 4K. What is being projected in most cases is a DCI 2K file. Most people can't tell the difference. At a normal viewing distance, you can't see individual pixels. Most people don't know any of this information. So it is considered good enough, and there is no motive or reason to improve this situation. When you saw a 35mm print in a cinema, it was covered in grain and dirt with cigarette burns for the real changes. And there was just general wear and tear of the print going through a projector multiple times a day. And it became a living document that was alive with all this extra data. It was awash with life. The amount of grain dancing around on the screen was entertaining in and of itself. It was a far more lively experience. Whereas now, you are watching a glorified Blu-ray player on a really big screen with a better sound system, playing a file that has a higher bitrate and better color, as long as you're comparing it to conventional Blu-ray and not UHD. Quentin Tarantino said you were watching a glorified Blu-ray when you went to cinema and saw a digital projection. I thought that was an over-the-top description, but it turns out Tarantino was not being hyperbolic. There was actual truth in what he was saying. It actually is the case that you are watching a Blu-ray film that has a static, clean picture without grain and dirt. I am not arguing in favor of grain and dirt as being the inherently better way of seeing a movie. I'm just saying it is a less exciting viewing experience with such a clean and static image. There's something about the analog part where you're seeing some sort of live event happening in front of you, whereas a digital projection is just a bunch of ones and zeros, which are reliable and consistent and don't become dirty or washed out over time. And a certain amount of life maybe gets lost. Not necessarily a bad thing, but there is something slightly less exciting about it. They will probably reissue Jaws for the 100th anniversary as a new remaster, and they can go back to the 35mm print and digitize it at 12K. The original 35mm print only has maybe 6K of actual data on it. All those extra Ks of information can still find things and just make it look better than it was before. In 50 years' time, when they come to do the 50th anniversary remaster reissue of Disclosure Day by Steven Spielberg, it will be a 1080p file with 128 extra pixels on the side. And of course, the choice of aspect ratio means the film might not use all those pixels. And all they can do is use AI to upscale it to increase its picture quality and apply maybe new color grading to it. But otherwise, the movie was completed in DCI 2K, and as I've already explained, that 2K does not mean double the pixels of 1080p. It just means high bitrate 1080p with 128 extra pixels on the side. This is a deeply disappointing situation. For one, I'm not thrilled at the idea of going to cinema and watching a 1080p file with 128 extra pixels on a horizontal with baked-in black bars, using up some of those pixels. The idea that I am supposed to be seeing the deluxe presentation of the movie in a cinema is important. That it's basically just a high bitrate Blu-ray played through a better sound system is rather disappointing. When you went to the cinema and you saw a 35mm print, you were seeing a high-quality copy of a 5K or 6K source, which was alive with all that grain and dirt. And now, when you go to the cinema, you're not even seeing it in the majority of cases with 4K digital projection. You're seeing a 1080p glorified Blu-ray that has the same pixel density of the definitive master copy. And only a small number of movies have 4K digital masters. This is not a good thing. Also, it means we will have to hope the files remain uncorrupted and the codecs readable many decades from now. I don't know why it's important to me for the romance of film to know that Paramount has a higher quality version of a movie sitting in their vaults that we, the consumer, cannot get to. I don't know why it's important for me, the consumer, to know that they have higher quality versions of their movies. I'm not an archivist. I'm not someone who preserves film for a career. And yet it bothers me greatly to think that a movie such as Can You Ever Forgive Me? From 2018, which is a small, modest film without any obvious computer-generated effects, only exists as a DCI 2K file. And that master file, remember, is not double the pixels of 1080p. And yet, for some reason, the idea that Chinatown exists in a 6K format, which cannot be released because the best version is a 4K ultra-high-definition Blu-ray, feels right and correct. The knowledge that a movie made after 2005 in the vast majority of cases exists in a version that's not vastly superior to the Blu-ray that I own is so disappointing. It somehow removes the romance out of the whole idea of film. It feels disappointing, like the magic trick has been revealed and the magician is not doing his work like he should be doing. The issue isn't about upscale 4K discs. It's that most of the source master files of films made after 2005 are merely 1080p with better color and a very high bitrate. I am not trying to advocate for going back to 35mm film. I have no actual issue with films being made digitally. I see there's a million upsides to it, and there's only a few downsides. But this downside of the final master copy being a low pixel number is significant, and it really is a big problem in my opinion. They can add all the upscaling AI tricks, and they can play around with the color all they want. But the truth of the matter is, there's only so many pixels on those digital masters. For some reason, it's important to me, and it makes me all warm and fuzzy inside to know that somewhere inside a vault there is a super-duper mega high-quality copy of the film. And when they do any reissues to a high technical standard, they are going back to that original source and making a copy that is a higher quality version than what was previously available. And no matter how many times we go back to the 35mm master, under current conditions, we cannot get to the end of the line and achieve parity with the master copy. I just want the master copy of these digital files to be at the very least 4K, preferably more like 6K. The fact that they are basically 1080p is quite terrifying to me. The implications for the future film is not great. And it boggles the mind that the vast majority of movies made after 2005 up to this very day are basically just 1080p video files with massive bit rates and better color.